welcome back to our channel where literature comes alive. Today we journey to the very beginnings of the English language, to a world of warriors, monks, and poets. This is the story of Old English poetry, the earliest and most powerful voice of England's literary past. The history of Old English poetry begins around the 5th century when the Anglo-Saxons and Jutes crossed the North Sea and settled in Britain. They brought with them their Germanic language, their tribal traditions, and a deep love for heroic storytelling. Their poems were not written at first. They were sung or recited aloud by scopes. Scopes are poets and storytellers who entertained warriors in the Mead Hall. Mead Hall was a large communal building in early Germanic and Norse societies, the heart of the Anglo-Saxon life. The Scop's voice carried the history of the tribe, tales of courage, loyalty, and fate. In these halls, poetry was more than art. It was memory, morality, and identity. For centuries, Old English poetry existed only in oral form. It was passed down by the word of mouth, shaped and reshaped by each generation. But with the coming of Christian missionaries in the 7th century, everything began to change. Monasteries became the centers of learning. Monks began to write down the poems, often blending Christian faith with the pagan traditions of the Anglo-Saxons. This fusion gave Old English poetry its unique voice, half warrior's song, half prayer. We owe the survival of most Old English verse to these monastic scribes who preserved them in manuscripts like the Exeter book, the Wesley book, and the Beowulf manuscript. About the language and style, Old English poetry has a rhythm that feels ancient and powerful. It did not rely on rhyme, instead, it used alliteration. Alliteration is a repetition of sounds to create musicality. Each line had a strong pause in the middle called a caesura, giving the verse a dramatic chant-like quality. Poets also use kennings. Kennings are compound words with metaphorical meaning. The sea was whale road, or blood was battle sweat. Through these devices, even simple stories gain grandeur and depth. This poetic language reflected the Anglo-Saxon world, where life was brief, fate was inescapable, and glory was only immortality. About the major themes and poems. Old English poets wrote about heroism, exile, loss, faith, and the passage of time. Their world was both pagan and Christian, filled with warriors and saints, battles and prayers. The greatest of all is Beowulf, an epic of courage and fate. Then there are lyric poems like The Seafarer, The Wanderer, which capture the loneliness of exile and the longing for spiritual peace. These poems reveal the inner world of the Anglo-Saxons, their melancholy, their endurance, and their faith in divine order. And finally, in The Dream of the Rood was one of the earliest Christian poems in English, where the cross speaks of Christ as a heroic warrior who embraces sacrifice. It unites the two souls of the Old English people, the sword and the scripture. About the manuscripts and their preservation. Only a few manuscripts preserve the entire world of Old English poetry. The Exeter book, holding elegies like The Wanderer and Seafarer, the Wesley book, containing the Dream of the Rood, and the novel Codex, where Beowulf survived against all odds. These fragile pages, nearly destroyed by time, fire, and war, are the only windows we have into that distant age. Every verse we read today is a miracle of survival. Coming to the legacy and conclusion of this particular lesson. Old English poetry marks the birth of English literature, the first time language was used to express thoughts, emotions, and faith. It is a foundation upon which all later poets, from Chaucer to Shakespeare, to T.S. Eliot would build. Though 1,000 years have passed, the voice of those early poets still echoes, a voice of courage in the face of fate, hope in the shadow of loss, and of beauty in simplest of words. We have come to the end of the lesson, students. Thank you for joining us in this journey into the origins of English poetry. If you enjoyed learning about Old English words, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more exploration into the history of literature. And tell us in your comments about which poem or poet you would like to know more. Thank you.